into the great glass elevator and rushed all over the world collecting special items from the oldest living things. They were a pint of sap from a 4,000-year-old bristlecone pine, the toenail clippings from a 168-year-old Russian farmer called Petrovich Gregorovich, an egg laid by a 200-year-old tortoise belonging to the king of Tonga, the tail of a 51-year-old horse in Arabia, the whiskers of a 36-year-old cat called Crumpets, an old flea which had lived on crumpets for 36 years, the tail of a 207-year-old giant rat from Tibet, the back teeth of a 97-year-old Grimaklin living in a cave on Mount Popocatépetl, and the knuckle bones of a 700-year-old Catalu from Peru. All over the world, Charlie. I tracked down very old and ancient animals and took an important little bit of something from each one of them, a hair or an eyebrow, or sometimes it was no more than an ounce or two of toe jam scraped from between its toes and while it was sleeping. I tracked down the whistle pig, the bobolink, the scroc, the polyfrog, the giant curicue, the stinging slug, and the venomous squirgle who can spit poison right into your eye from 50 yards away. But there's no time to tell you all about them all now, Charlie. Let me just say quickly that in the end, after lots of boiling and bubbling and mixing and testing in my inventing room, I produced one tiny cupful of oily black liquid and gave 4 drops of it to a brave 20-year-old Oompa Loompa volunteer to see what happened. What did happen? Cried Mr. Wonka. What did happen? Charlie asked. It was fantastic, cried Mr. Wonka. The moment he swallowed it, he began wrinkling and shriveling up all over, and his hair started dropping off, and his teeth started falling out, and before I knew it, he had suddenly become an old fellow of 75. And thus, my dear Charlie, was Wonkavite invented. Did you rescue all the Oompa Loompa Minuses, Mr. Wonka? Every single one of them, my boy. 131 all told. Mind you, it wasn't quite as easy as all that. There were lots of snags and complications along the way. Good heavens, we're nearly there. I must stop talking now and watch where we're going. Charlie realized that the elevator was no longer rushing and roaring. It was hardly moving at all now. It seemed to be drifting. Undo your straps, Mr. Wonka said. We must get ready for action. Charlie undid his straps and stood up and peered out. It was an eerie sight. They were drifting in a heavy gray mist, and the mist was swirling and swishing around them as though driven by winds from many sides. In the distance, the mist was darker and almost black, and it seemed to be swirling more fiercely than ever over there. Mr. Wonka slid open the doors. Stand back, he said. Don't fall out, Charlie, whatever you do. The mist came into the elevator. It had the fusty, reeky smell of an old underground dungeon. The silence was overpowering. There was no sound at all, no whisper of wind, no voice of creature or insect, and it gave Charlie a queer, frightening feeling to be standing there in the middle of this gray, inhuman nothingness, as though he were in another world altogether, in some place where a man should never be. Minusland, whispered to Mr. Wonka. This is it, Charlie. The problem now is to find her. We may be lucky, and then again we may not. To be continued.